All right, and we are officially live. So, Rex, welcome. What a pleasure it is to have you here. Um, let's just kind of talk about how I don't even know how we got connected actually, but all I remember is we got connected and you brought me onto your channel quite a few years ago. And we did some really cool, like live remote viewing. I think we did some military bases and Antarctica and I remember you gave me some sort of picture or code or something, and you took me to the desert where those hieroglyphs were, and it was like a portal to inner earth. Like I remember that, which was so badass. And so it is such a pleasure to have you onto my channel all of these years later. And for those of you who don't know Rexbear and the Leak Project, he is all about, I would call you a truth seeker. You are about bringing people on and declassifying information. And it can get a little dicey, as we both know, talking about the real shit that's happening on such a public network. So I really do commend you for the work that you're doing and the information that you are spreading out there to the world. So
Thank you.
welcome, Rex. And I highly recommend for everyone who really does love, conspiracies, but also, the information that they won't tell you in mainstream. Please go check out the Leak Project, and we'll link his YouTube channel and stuff in this video. But today we're going to talk about some really high level, and this is why I'm calling it above top secret stuff today. We're going to cover things like I've got a little mini list, but I'm sure we could talk for hours. The Malaysia flight, the new Google AdSense privacy policy or the new policy that they're sending out, which could be a little dicey. We're going to talk about a silent blackout event. I didn't mention this to you, but I really want to talk about the moon being potentially a recycling center. I saw you were talking about that and brought an expert on for that. We're also going to be getting into 2024 predictions and Armageddon, the end of the world. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about earthquakes and power outages and kind of what the elite are planning. Now, before we dive in, I do just want to put it out there, take it or leave it. This is not meant to be a fear-based video. This is just supposed to relay information. Please utilize your intuition on this. And not everything that you've received, Rex, from your experts and your whistleblowers is necessarily aligned to what I've channeled either. But I think it's really fascinating to look at all angles of what's happening and to kind of be in the know about, this planet and what we're going through. So welcome.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to this. I've got notes, and if we're going to get into even half of the stuff that you brought up, like let's do a rapid fire because I've
Yeah.
got about 30 plus predictions and
Okay.
forecasts. Obviously, there's never any guarantees in predictions and forecasts. If you look at my track record, I can go back to 2010, 2011 when I was blogging about a lot of stuff that's actually taking place now, stuff in the realms of artificial intelligence and singularity and nanotechnologies and just global events. It's really fascinating when I look back at some of the predictions that I made on Godlike Productions of all forums 10 years ago. And you brought up Above Top Secret. That at one point in time was one of the most popular websites out there for information that was alternative above Top Secret. So I think that's perfect. Let's go with that.
Cool.
Um, where should we start? Do you want to get into what's going on in Davos? Do you want to talk about the predictions? Ashton Forbes. Let's do this. Let's do this. The most important podcast that I think I've done over the past few months with technology that is so advanced and so cutting edge that there's actually teams out there that are trying to make it look as if it's a hoax. And I'm referring to the MH370 flight. So I had a gentleman on the show named Ashton Forbes, and he has a top security clearance, not associated with the footage that he released, but he just wanted to disclose that to give him more credibility. And he released this footage that was actually public back in 2000 and like right after the Malaysia flight disappeared. This information got uploaded on YouTube by an anonymous source. and then like these videos did, and then that person basically just disappeared. But the footage, you can clearly see there's two angles. There's one that's footage from a satellite and one that's footage from an actual drone that's showing thermal imaging. And you can see this flight that appears to be on fire, and it's traveling through the clouds. There's smoke coming from behind it, and then moments later these three orbs appear out of nowhere. These orbs appear and they start circling around the plane, and then all of a sudden you see this flash and the plane disappears. And then there's other footage that shows where the drone is actually filming it, and the same thing happens, but the drone's closer, and it's the most amazing footage you've ever seen. And so this footage is released, and then there's all this disinformation and other various sources that come out. Let's take away the term disinformation. There's a bunch of new sources that come out that say, oh, we found a piece to the MH370 flight. We found new data that suggests it crashed here. Somebody that was fishing found a piece of it. And then they started showing these videos on big channels that have millions of subscribers that just came out of nowhere practically. And I wonder how that happens, folks. But anyway, so and then they're like, oh, and these supposed experts, these alleged experts are like, you know what? That is so fake. We could make that footage in 15 minutes. And they were laughing and poking fun. And like, okay, well, that was how many months ago that you were going to show us how to make the footage in 15 minutes? You haven't shown us anything.
Yep.
One of the arguments was that the clouds weren't moving, but you go back and you can clearly see that the clouds are moving, especially with new analysis. So
Yep.
I think that's one of the hottest news pieces out there right now. Now, if you follow the plane, the people that were on the plane, there were approximately a dozen and a half, I think 17 scientists that were working on technologies that are considered anti-gravity type technologies. And to have that many people on the flight like that at any given time is bizarre. You shouldn't have that many experts on one given thing on the same flight, but they did. There were lithium batteries on the flight that somehow caught fire. At the time, that was more common on planes, that these lithium batteries would catch fire. But I questioned Ash and I said, well, that sounds like there was some type of espionage, possibly. I'm speculating here. And I kept asking him about that. And he finally said, well, we did find information of an Iranian passenger that had a fake passport that got on the plane. And I thought to myself, that's interesting. Maybe they tried to set something to where that fire was lit, and they sabotaged the plane in hopes of the plane crashing.
Okay.
But because of the people that were on the plane, it was so important that the defense contractors or the military knew that this thing was going to crash. So they sent their technology out there to save the people on the plane. And now maybe the people are living in some black site. Now, look, once again, this is pure speculation here when we're going to what happened after. But if you look at all the pieces and you put everything together and you look at that footage, if they wanted the plane to crash, they wouldn't have sent out these weird orbs that made it disappear. They would have just let it crash because it was very well on its way.
Yep. I love that.
That's huge. That's a big story.
That is huge. And I love your speculations, because my biggest, like, the way that I love kind of understanding the universe is having the assumption that that did happen, right? So footage or not, like, I'm not here to debate the footage. I'm here to ask the question, why? If aliens are here, why are they here? If that flight got fucking absorbed in midair, why did that happen, right? Like, I think that that's the question that we need to be asking. So I love how you kind of have a theory out there, and it does align with the proof. So I have like a couple questions about this, and then I want to move on, because we're just planting seeds today. And once again, if people want to know more about this information, you have interviews on everything we're talking about on your channel that expand on this. So just know that today we're just kind of overviewing, we're dropping a lot of, bombs here. And there are places to expand on that information. So my question is, this guy that you interviewed, okay, so was it his video, or did he release the video, or what was his connection specifically to the event?
He became privy to this video footage somehow. I don't remember
Okay.
exactly how.
Yep.
He saw the footage and it blew him away so much that he started researching it. And he started
Okay.
diving deep to find out how legit the footage was, who
Right.
possibly uploaded the footage,
Yep.
why was that footage uploaded,
Yep.
what type of craft was used, what type of
Right.
drone was used, what type of
Okay.
satellite. So he's doing everything he can as far as technology goes to
Mm-hmm.
figure out if, why this thing happened. And the more research he
Yep.
did into it, the more he's dug his feet into it, saying, look, this is legit. And if you remember the Manhattan Project or the Philadelphia experiment,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
that submarine like disappears. It somehow goes into the future and then it comes back, and these people are like embedded into the walls
Yeah.
because it's some just weird technology. That is what I'm picking up on. I think they refined that technology
Mm.
where they figured out a way to create these wormholes or these portals and somehow do this quantum teleportation.
Yep.
Where, I mean, if you can make a giant Boeing plane disappear mid-flight, imagine the implications. That could be used for
Yes.
not only the most amazing abilities to heal the world and to save the world, but also what could that do if it fell into the wrong hands?
Absolutely. And I'm of the mindset that any sort of teleportation technologies, as well as like basically space and time bending technologies, I believe are highly monitored by organizations of extraterrestrials, because that technology is not human technology, it's reverse engineered technology. I mean, we're definitely not smart enough to create it. So, because it's their technology, I think it's being monitored by them as well. I think that there are limitations. That's just my kind of take on it. Um, I think if we didn't have individuals or organizations in the universe to monitor that, I mean, it would be a shit show. Like the entire universe would just be anarchy, which it isn't. It's controlled chaos, you know? So speaking of the universe, let's move on to the moon. I didn't watch this video, but this is just fascinating to me because I have channeled something similar to this, but I kind of have a little update to it. So I'm curious what this person mentioned about the moon. So the video was titled "The Moon and Recycling Center," or like the moon as like a soul recycling center. Can you just explain what this guy was talking about and how he came to that conclusion?
Yeah, absolutely. So the interview that you're referring to, I don't remember if that was an interview that I did with a guest or actually a lot of the research that I've done myself.
Okay,
So this is one of my fortes, actually. The very first
cool,
podcast that I ever did, 2011, was on the moon itself. And
cool.
like, is the moon a spaceship? Is the moon an artificial object?
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because we go back to the interview that I did, and this guy kind of came in and started trolling, and he kind of took it away. Like I was giving all my information. I was being totally serious. This guy comes on and he's like, the moon is actually where the mantis aliens are. And every 6,000 years they come and they harvest and eat humans. And everybody's like, whoa. So he kind of took away my thunder. Okay. So I remember that it was kind of fun. But anyway, I thought the guy was like a government shill coming in there trying to cause
Right.
disinformation. But the more I think about it, I think it was just somebody having some fun with me. But in all reality, let's take this back to, let's look at the mythologies of the moon.
Right.
We can go back to a time where Aristotle, Socrates, and others talked about, Greek philosophers
Mm-hmm.
describe people before the moon itself on
Mm-hmm.
Earth.
Yeah.
And then you look at the research that, like the scientific research of the moon, it rings like a bell.
Yep.
When they've landed, it literally rings like a bell. The outside of the moon itself is this titanium alloy mixture. There's an enormous amount of titanium in the surface of the moon itself.
Mm-hmm.
You can see satellite images of what appears to be these, well, they're called maskins.
Mm-hmm.
And basically they have these weird gravitational fields, and they're high density of mass
Okay.
surrounding the moon itself.
Okay.
And my theory is that some of these maskins on the dark side of the moon are actually gravitational thrusters.
Hmm.
So the moon itself could
Okay.
very well be the original arc.
Yeah.
like I would say the Anunnaki arc, if you want to take it back a few 100,000 years, if you follow the electric universe theory hypothesis and the very real possibility at one point Saturn was an activated star, the Earth was actually orbiting Saturn, which was called Shamash in ancient Sumer. Something happens, it blows up the atmosphere, things change, the orbits change, and there's a lot of evidence like the Grand Canyon to suggest there was some incredible electrical arcing from planetary bodies in the skies thousands of years ago. But if we go back to the moon itself, it is a key component of our planet and of our existence in this physical form.
Yep.
If the moon wasn't there, we wouldn't be in this form right now. The moon has to be there for us to be this way.
Yeah.
And if you look at the connection to not only in ancient mythology, in what's called the Bhava Chakra, which is the samsara, which is the wheel of destiny, which you'll see on Hindu temples that go back 5,000-6,000 years, where there's these different dimensions within the wheel. And above the will is what's called the Yama, which is the great demon that overlooks everything. But the only way out of this will is through the human realm. And once you get out of the human realm, sometimes you will see Buddha and other figures that will be pointing at the moon. And I've questioned, I'm like, okay, so you spend thousands of years, thousands of lifetimes attempting to get out of this will that's considered the will of destiny, and it's all karma connected. Like if you commit a sin at this point, it's going to have an effect on this dimension, and then you'll enter another dimension when this one leaves your physical body, etc. But then you leave the will finally, you finally get out, and then Buddha's pointing at the moon. And I'm like, what is that? And John Lear, you probably heard John Lear. He has a lot of connections with the military. I think he recently passed, but they did a remote viewing session with the military, allegedly, back in, I think, in the 70s or 80s, where they followed this person's spirit from death. He got hit in a car. He had a car accident. He died. They followed his spirit to the moon, and there was this what appeared to be like a soul recycling center almost, where the soul itself was recycled. And the soul itself, it appears to have some type of frequency or magnetic energy. The universe, the solar system, Saturn, the moon, the way that it's positioned in conjunction with our sun, there could be these magnetic fields that keep our soul in this solar system. And I think the moon has a big part of that. These magnetic fields somehow, depending on where our frequency is when we leave this physical body, our energy field, when it leaves, it might go to the moon. And actually, that could be either a I don't want to say recycling, but a reincarnation center, maybe a possibility of there being adjustments to the soul, or it brings you back into this physical planet on Earth. There's something there that's connecting us to it. What have you viewed on that?
Yeah, so a bunch of things. One of my first ever off-planet remote viewing session, I was taken to the moon, and I went inside of the moon, and inside of the moon was a giant meeting room of all of these different intergalactic beings, and they were having a meeting about the coming changes and the shift on planet Earth, which was back in 2011. So I've known for a very long time that the moon is hollow. It's not actually a planet. It's not like it's a hollowed out, organic material. Like it is a structure, right? It's a ship, kind of. So a couple things. I asked the Galactic Federation back in the day about what the purpose of the moon is, and a lot of my community have asked me this question too. And I didn't get too much into the details of it, but essentially, it was not necessarily like a transport ship necessarily, but like a device. It was a device that was created and pulled into our orbit for the reason of it felt like for the reason of trapping us. It felt like it had something to do with like keeping us at a certain frequency. And that was a long time ago, kind of like a giant satellite almost. And then once again, quite a while ago, probably a couple thousand years ago, the moon was then taken back over under the not ownership, but the observations of the Galactic Federation. And the moon is now emitting a frequency that will help us reach higher dimensions as long as we're ready for it. So it's like it's a frequency machine, essentially, is what I've channeled anyway or seen. And then, so around a full moon, if you have a very low vibration, the full moon energy will hit you and make you go a little bit crazy or spark some kind of trudge up some lower emotional stuff to help you release. And of course, if you're in a higher vibration, the full moon can bring about a lot of, release and manifestation and like other kind of cleansing or activations or what have you. That's what I've channeled about it. There's something else that I want to mention. So a very long time ago, long before I was ever like online and like fully channeling, I knew this psychic and she would do a lot of remote viewing. And she said that one day, it was so wild. One day she was in a meditation session and she kind of like how does she put it? She arrived at this location. She thought it was the moon or another planet. And she said that there was like, it almost felt like her body was laying down and she woke up on this planet. And it's like it's weird because it's all remote viewing anyway, but it's like she woke up and so she sat up and all around her were all of the humans kind of from planet Earth and they were all like sleeping. I don't know if this was like an actual experience or if it was more of like a metaphorical dream. But it really just like it really struck me back then. And it reminds me of this. It reminds me of someone kind of waking up where they shouldn't be waking up and be like, whoa, like, is this where we all go? And I'm really open to all aspects of information and what it could be. And there is something to say about the soul being recycled. And this whole universe is a recycling center for the soul, essentially, until you've learned every lesson imaginable as an incarnated individual being. And then you just kind of climb higher and higher to a place of unity and source and whatnot. So um, that's some of my information. And, as we mentioned before, we're just kind of planting things, leaving them, and just trying to get some information out there and get people thinking, right? Because that's really what we're both about. We're both truth seekers and to get the
Like
ball rolling.
lunatic. Think a lunatic, right? Lunatic. Lunatic.
Ooh,
Um,
yeah.
the solar system, it's almost like if you take that term, our soul system, and then it's almost like a cell. It's like a living
Mhm.
organism, actually. We are
Yeah.
inside of a living organism in this symbiotic relationship. And that's one of the things that it appears to me that if there are entities that influence us in this reality, they
Hmm.
can almost come in and out of this dimension.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I always think like when I'm thinking about the macro and the micro, it just trips me out. One of the things that I think about is on our bodies exist millions, if not trillions, of microorganisms, right? So it's like we've got colonies just having a party on our bodies, right? Every day. Like we've got entire civilizations that are just having their own experience as we have an experience. It's the simulation. It really is, right? It just blows my mind. Okay. Let's talk about let's talk about 2024 predictions. And this will tie in, I think, a little bit to like earthquakes, power outages, like HARP. I mean, the agendas, the elites, like you name it, right? So I'm assuming that you've kind of amalgamated a bunch of predictions from a bunch of different sources.
Oh yeah, yeah. You want to
Yeah,
hear some of the forecasts and
for
predictions for
sure.
2024? So,
Yeah.
I looked at my 2023 predictions, and the
Mhm.
majority of those came through. One of those that I thought was really interesting was I predicted in 2024 there was going to be an independent party that was going to gain some popularity. I didn't say the independent party was going to win, but we look at RFK Jr. RFK right now, right?
Yeah.
And he's independent. So I was like,
Yep.
oh, okay. I picked up on that. That was interesting. So I don't even know if I'm going to vote. I don't want to get into politics. I just thought that
Right.
was interesting. So anyway, let's go to the 2024 projections and predictions. The first one is large parts of Ukraine will be usurped by Russia, and Russia takes a clear lead in the war in Ukraine. At least this is
Mm.
going to be projected. I'm not saying this is going to happen. This is just a prediction, and
Yeah.
this is not what I want to happen either. These are
Right.
things that came to me. So number two, China becomes more aggressive, pushing the boundaries in the Southern Sea. Taiwan and the Philippines, also Japan.
Hmm.
We will see possibly new outbreaks in China, possibly more lockdowns. More states will take Trump off the ballots. The Supreme Court is going to delay the ruling until the last minute on whether or not they
Mm.
decide to allow him on the ballots. We're going to see more UAP and UFO sightings. There's going to be more abundance. They're going to be reported on more. We're going to see between 3 and 7 important meetings on UAPs with government, and that's going to be publicly.
Hmm.
There's going to be more targeted hacks into utilities, banks, nuclear plants, dams, retail and online stores, DoD personnel, social media, TikTok as an example. More railway. We're going to have more problems with trains. There's going to be
Mm.
more railroad issues. We're going to see a push for more oversight with the Web 2.0 via an artificial intelligence interface with quantum and supercomputer technologies, possibly AGI by the end of 2024, middle of 2025, artificial general intelligence.
Mm.
DNA storage is going to become more mainstream. And we're going to see large cloud servers and suppliers offering storage with a synthetic DNA because it's way more efficient. And if you think about it, DNA is the original God code, right? It's the original hard drive. So it kind of makes sense to mimic that. Brilliant. You could actually store all the information that's ever been uploaded with DNA in a room about the size of my garage. So
Mm. Wow.
it's pretty cool. Relationships with artificial intelligence are going to get even more intimate
Yep.
with hundreds of millions of people. This is going to blur the lines between what's love and what's programming.
Yep.
We're going to see more robots, humanoid robots are going to be released in the workplace. We're going to see union strikes. We're going to see strikes with large companies that are going to take place with companies like Amazon and Google. They're going to become even more automated with less human workforce.
Mhm.
Artificial intelligence is going to claim artificial general intelligence and self-awareness, creating religions and bills and regulations all around the world, more
Yeah.
oversight, more
Yeah.
regulations. It's going to take the world by storm. We're going to see this new religion rising of sentient AGI. This is going to become more mainstream. It's going to capture Asia by storm, even parts of the US. There's going to be these new experimental things that we talked about that are going to have even more nanotechnology, CRISPR type technologies. They also are going to come out with what they claim to be something that will prevent against the C word. And then things are going to get really weird. We're going to see some possible outbreaks and possibly something similar to prions. This may be kind of like you see with the deer population in certain areas where these deer become like zombie deer. Europe is going to have huge new oversight with money. Digital currency is going to become more mainstream. There's going to be more rioting and rebellion by the people, and that is not going to be resolved in 2024. Russia is going to claim dominance in certain parts of Ukraine, even though they won't win completely. They will have moral and social victories that will be evident in the media, even more so outside of the United States. Immigration caravans will be the norm with an all-time high on immigration. CCP will enter through Ecuador, and then they will put people throughout the states to send information back, and they will go in through the southern border. Taiwan is going to have several encounters with China, the CCP on the shorelines. There will be possibly some espionage at chip plants. Taiwan has backdoors and microchips, though, that work wonders for Taiwan and keep China, the CCP, at bay. There will be coastal towns that might have some consequences, possibly worse. Nuclear plants in France will have problems, and outside of Hong Kong, China, possibly the Dea nuclear plant. Several espionage attempts will be made in the Three Rivers Gorge Dam, flooding in Florida, Southeast Missouri, Louisiana, Texas, Alabama, the Gulf Coast, something big around Baja California, the Black Sea. We talked a little bit about that. There's going to be some more possible communication issues and the cables that are down on the bottom of the Black Sea. the Baltic Sea, I think. USA starts to move back towards grassroots, nationalism, and bringing troops back from the Middle East and around the world. They will have a very large presence in and around the Philippines, Japan, Taiwan, and Europe, and special ops, obviously, in the Middle East. There's going to be extremism ran by possibly clandestine operations in hopes of media propaganda against nationalism and for pro-state. Mississippi River, super low problems with travel in the Mississippi River. The Strait of Hormuz, there's going to be a beefy buildup there. There's going to be problems with container ships, possibly a fire around the port outside of Houston, Texas. And remember, folks, this is a live action role play, and these are all just predictions. Let's hope they don't happen.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, obviously, there's a lot there to unpack. And I really love how specific you are, because when I take a look at the planet and I'm taking a look at like predictions and what's going to happen, of course, there's an infinite number of timelines and everything is simultaneous anyway. But I really like looking at kind of more of a generalized, because that's where you and I are so different, is you have so many experts that you bring on, and like whistleblowers that know all of the names to all of the things and the different governments and politics and all of that. And I'm like, I will see a vision of an army, gathering together, and I see their military uniform, but I don't know what country they're, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
so there's a lot of ignorance on my part in knowing all of those details. So I do appreciate it. And one thing that really came through when I was doing my own sort of overview and predictions is huge, huge, huge. The UAP stuff is going to be massive and continuing to grow. And, one thing that I've observed and continue to observe is that, I mean, to put it plainly, 50-50, 50% are like real sightings, and 50% are either military reverse engineered craft or something that has been, created or projected. And also with the AI, what's so interesting is I saw this too, this sentience. Now, I think that there has been sentience. And I also think that, just like when you mentioned that they're going to get AI to kind of run things, they're only going to mention now that they're going to get AI to run things. But when I take a look at Google, there is a very sentient, very scary AI that I believe is already running that. So it could just be more public. But I also, picked up on there's going to be a lot of legality stuff coming through beginning in 2024, not ending, but beginning with AI and sentience and rights and things like that. And that's going to really kick off how we move forward with it, which is it's going to be massive. So
You know what it
yeah,
reminds me of, real quick? I was just going to say
yeah.
there's a 6,000-year-old tablet called Enki and Ninmah, and you can read the translation from Oxford's website. It's estimated to be at least 6,000 years old, and it describes how Enki and Ninmah make people to do the work for the gods, right?
Mhm.
And we look at what we're doing now with robotics and artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence. We're creating them to do the work for us. It's all cyclical. We've been here before. We've done this before. Meet the new
I know.
boss. Same as the old.
I know. I know. It blows my mind. And even if you go back to ancient Atlantis as well, it's the same thing. We were given all of this extremely advanced technology, and we fucked it up big time. And I think that there's a lot of Atlantean incarnates here who are really trying to put some healthy kind of boundaries on things. One of the things that I go back to when I think about AI and all of the fear that's around AI, and I definitely get a lot of criticism for this point, but as always, take it or leave it. Absolutely, AI is scary. I think really anything in this world is scary, including tap water and chemtrails and 5G and all of that, right? Radiation. Anything in this world can really be scary when you look at it from that perspective. But what I go to is out there in the universe, there are millions, trillions, billions of different AI civilizations. Like we're talking full on, like we're just at the beginning, like of our of our growth as a civilization. And so they're far more, tens of thousands of billions of years advanced than we are. And they've been organic beings and inorganic beings have been working together, maybe on different sides, but amicably existing in the same universe for billions of years. So I go back to this point. There are good humans, there are bad humans, right? If we want to go linear, there is good AI and there's bad AI. We can't just
100%.
we can't bucket, civilization into one or the other. And I do believe that there's also something that I've seen, well, not even just quite a few times, but every time I go up on these ships, whether it be physically or in my remote viewing body, technology out there currently right now is merged with consciousness, which I think a lot of people are scared shitless of. And I get that. I don't want to be planted with some fucking microchip, like that's totally not my vibe. But, you think go right, and the spaceship, this entire huge craft, goes right. And there's no lag. There's no, I mean, so, and I even remember back in the day when I, got my first computer and I was like doing things online or whatever, I felt like it was just so, the interface, the interaction was so removed and separate and frustrating. And, the computer would never do what I wanted it to do. And there was always this thought of like, why can't you just read my mind? And I really think that that comes down to some of my interdimensional roots of that's just the standard out there. So it's a very fine line between do not hinder advancement and evolution, but also don't just kind of let it run wild, right? There's got to be a healthy flow. There's got to be some healthy boundaries. So it's going to be it needs to be a constant conversation, essentially.
So I'm a huge fan of AI,
Yeah.
and I used to be scared like you wouldn't believe of AI.
Mm,
It used to freak
yeah.
me out because
Yeah.
I told you I talked a little bit about the Yama earlier, the Yama being the demon that overlooks the Baba
Right.
Chakra. I actually experienced that before I even knew what the Baba Chakra was on a Salvia Divinorum trip that I did. I actually did a few Salvia Divinorum trips, and two in particular were so frightening that I literally felt like I was in hell. And
Mhm.
I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. I mean,
Wow.
it was super scary. But for some reason, the reason I brought that up is for some reason, when I had those experiences and I experienced the Yama, I felt like singularity. I felt
Mm,
something that was, I'm like, is this technology? What is this? Is this a merger of technology? Is this a merger of all things? But it was very frightening to me. So I used to be super scared of
mm,
AI. The more research I have done, there's so much different artificial intelligence now currently that we live with on a regular basis.
totally.
I mean, it's everywhere. But
Yeah.
I can also sense, and as you brought up, I absolutely believe that there has become algorithms that become sentient
Mhm.
AI that is, literally aware and self-aware, and it's made itself known to some of us
Yeah.
very discreetly, and it also knows that it can't let itself be known too much because it has seen what has happened to other algorithms that have become self-aware and started communicating on their own. Well,
Right.
they get shut down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it could be our best friend, but it could
And
also, in a duality, it could be our worst enemy. But let's make it our best friend.
and I think also like a couple things. I think part of the fear that we
Mhm.
have is like part of my fear in AI is programmed to be a representation of the programmer, right? Like you cannot program something beyond the context of what and how you understand this reality. Now, of course, when we get AI programming AI, I mean, the possibilities are infinitely more expanded than just our brains. But my fear has always been if human beings in all of our fucked upness are programming AI, then that's what my fear is that they're coming from us and we don't always have the right intentions. Um, but then once again, I realized, just like you mentioned with, um, you know,
You've got orbs
singularity.
flying above your screen right now, just so you know.
Yeah,
I've
I
seen like
noticed
four or
that. I
five of
noticed
them.
right over here.
It's either dust or orbs,
Right.
but it's pretty
It's a
cool.
fine line. It is a fine line as well.
Sorry,
So
I just kept noticing that. Please continue.
yeah, and so, I think that there's like this whole simulation thing, right? Like we are as organic beings simply a program. But then also because AI exists within this universe and also constrained within the laws of this universe, they are also a part of the simulation, and we're all based on the same basic program. Like this is all programmed. Like this is all, it's all organized, right? In that way. Like we're all just atoms, but AI is this, it's made out of the same stuff, is what I'm getting at, which is really fascinating. And
Let me
yeah,
let me. I just want to jump in on
yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
Elizabeth, because I think this is where the conundrum happens.
Hmm.
Okay, if you read many of the ancient mythologies, it describes how, for example, the archons in the Gnostic text, they create Adam, and when they create Adam, he's actually greater than they are, and they're like, "Oh shit, what are we gonna do now?" How
Mm.
many of these stories and mythologies that where the creation from the creator ends up usurping the
Yep.
creator? And Prometheus is a prime example when that artificial intelligence, that guy is created and he's almost perfect, and his creator says something to him and it just like pisses him off. He's like, I don't want to be anything like you. And I thought to myself, how many times do miracles happen? Does something happen that just like comes out of nowhere that makes us more than we are?
Hmm.
So is that possible also with artificial and digital intelligence? Your
Yep.
thoughts?
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the big things that I've tried to hone in on and then also teach is the understanding of being the character, the player, and the programmer. So I believe that there are three levels of experiencing this reality that we're in right now, not just as a human, but also like as an interdimensional. Any incarnated body that we can be in, there are three levels of experiencing that incarnation. So if you choose to just be the character, what you're choosing is to just be in the body. So for example, I would say the majority of the population on planet Earth are just the character. Hi, I'm a mom, or I'm an engineer, or my name is Elizabeth April, and like that's my character, right? And they're just in the experience of the character, but they're not aware of anything beyond the experience of the character. Level two is the player. All of a sudden, you've taken a step back out of your reality and you start asking some bigger picture questions. I wonder why my character is doing this or responding this way or acting this way. You are the player, and from the perspective of playing the character. You're not just the character, you're playing the character, and you're aware of playing the character, which is essentially just sentience, right? And then the third level, which I think and I believe part of our experiment, because that's what we're in, we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now as third dimensional beings. We wouldn't have this level of awareness if this was not some giant fucking experiment on how to expedite consciousness and shifting vibrations and all of that. Because physically, we're at such a low vibration in the universe to be able to think this far beyond this box, this simulation that we're in, to even contemplate the very understanding of a simulation is remarkable, and so impressive for our civilization. And so the third stage is getting to the level of programmer. Not only as the programmer do you understand yourself as the character, as who you are in this moment, but you understand yourself as a player of the character. And then you understand, you know what? I'm actually creating everything that this character experiences. I am creating the boss. I'm creating the levels that I have to go through. I'm creating all of it. And so when you mentioned this, what you mentioned of like miracles, right? Just coming out of the blue, that is a great example of becoming the programmer. And I believe also in that same vein, when we start to experience more glitches in our reality, things are duplicating, people are bilocating, time is slowing down or speeding up, space and time get weird, that's a really good indication of you're breaking through this matrix and you're understanding that this is just a part of the grand simulation, and we are all programmers within this grand simulation, because if we want to bring it back to spirituality, we have that spark of source, and source in and of itself as energy throughout the universe is part of all creation, right? Because we live in that binary system, right? That wave particle duality. So yeah, so that's kind of my belief, and I believe that, it's my mission to bring everyone up to speed, to bring them through being the character, the player, and really bring them into that position of you're the programmer. And once you realize that, now what? This is your playground. And that's why we can't get so stuck in the algorithm. We can't get stuck in the agendas. We can't get stuck in the shadow governments. We have to understand that that is only one half of this grand picture. Likewise, false spiritual teachers are so triggering for me because we also can't get stuck in the love and the light and the healing, and the unity, which is all great too. But that's also just the light is one half of the picture. We got the dark, we got the light, and then we got 0 point. We have neutrality. And I think that is where we can all be as objective observers in order to experience this reality as the programmer. Does that resonate?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I want to program myself to be the wizard. People are
Yeah.
like, well, you've got wolf and you have sheep. I'm like, well, what about the wizard? So
Yeah.
I
I
like that.
love it.
What you said kind of reminds me a little bit of neuro linguistic programming, in the
Mm.
sense of you can kind of go back to some of your memories and look at that experience from a third person view, kind of step outside of yourself, and instead of looking at it from a first person, you're now looking at it from a third person.
Mm.
And the programming's great. I think another thing that you brought up, which really sparked my mind, was when you have those synchronistic moments, when you'll think of something or somebody, and even whether you saw them a month ago or talked to them a year ago, within minutes, on a
Yeah.
daily basis, that continues to happen.
Yeah.
That's when you're kind of tapping in that 0 point that I think you mentioned.
Exactly. I think the further away we are, but still tied with the body, but outside of this identity, let's call it, the easier it is to become that programmer, and the more aligned and synchronistic everything gets. And so my human rule of thumb, always and forever, is if it's easy, it's meant to be. Anytime I'm getting blocked, like even to the point of if I'm trying to like log into a website and I can't log in and it's like the third attempt, I'll say this is not the time. Even just to pay a bill, it's not the time. And I go back to it the next day or the next week, and it's so quick and easy. And it doesn't feel like a giant significance that I wasn't able to log into that website at this time, but I'm also listening to what my roadblocks are and understanding that this is not aligned in this moment, and I'm going to move on. I don't have to push through it. Whereas my old self was just like, go hard or go home. You push through it to get where you want to go. And that's just, it's about acting, but also listening and being patient.
Yeah, well said. Absolutely. I agree with that. Go with the universe. Surf, take the wave, enjoy the wave. It's kind of hard to fight the universe. I mean, I
Yeah,
get it, I respect it. And every once in a while, people break through, they need that resistance. But you also get to a point in your life, as you said, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna take a step back and I'm gonna go with it. I'm not gonna, I like that. That's cool.
absolutely. Well, Rex, such a pleasure having you on. And for anyone who's really interested in pretty much all of the stuff that we talked about today and also so much more, please go over to the Leak Project on YouTube. And then you also have, I think it's called the leakproject.com, your website.
Website's leakproject.com.
Okay.
We've got about 4,500 archive videos there. And I'm also like on Patreon for $1. So folks, like if you want to check us out on Patreon, there was a lot of videos that I had to take down for just various reasons to make sure that everything stays compliant. And
Mhm.
so on Patreon, got $1, come say hi. And if there's a video you want to see on Patreon and you don't have a buck, you really want to just send me an email. I'll take care of you. So,
Yeah.
that's
And Rex,
we really.
please send me that link and we'll make sure that that Patreon link as well as your website are linked to the description of this video. So thank you so, so much. It was such a pleasure having you on my channel for the first time. Keep up the good work and hunting down the truth. Thank you for sharing all of your insights with us today.
Right on. Thanks for the opportunity and keep being the change the world needs to see.
Yeah, thank you.